Back here on SportsLine, phone lines open, 737-7767, the number. We would love to hear from you tonight. We threw out some of the Preds inconsistencies, Nashville SC's gutting end to the season in penalty kicks to the Philadelphia Union on Sunday, and the Titans, where they sit right now in the middle of this two-game losing streak with all the injuries. Take it wherever you want to go with that right now. We can hit any topic you want, frankly, but those certainly three at the top of the list for many around here. But right now, for this moment, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in college football right now. And we have seen one of the most remarkable coaching carousels already that we can remember in recent years. We knew that Dan Mullen was out at Florida. We knew that Ed Orgeron was out at LSU. We knew that Clay Helton was out at USC. Those are three premier jobs in college football, probably all in the top five. Certainly top 6, 7, 8 in the country. You know, Ohio State's in that mix. Texas should be in that mix, maybe not right this second. Alabama's in that mix. And there's a handful of others, Michigan, Penn State, Georgia. They're all on the cuffs there as well. Notre Dame in the mix, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. But certainly those three jobs are right there at the top of the cream of the crop jobs in college football, and so you knew they'd be able to attract good candidates. Billy Napier going from Louisiana to Florida. He's a guy who has been hot and on the radar for several years and decided to stay put. He waited. He wanted to hit the jackpot, so to speak, and I think he did. And I think Florida did too, because I really think Billy Napier is a really good coach. But that wasn't the shockwave. Billy Napier to Florida, that's a nice hire. I think it can work well for the Gators. But the shockwaves came when USC came and plucked Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma. One of those other primo jobs to come be their coach. And then they reverberated and even grew when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame last night to become the head coach at LSU. And oh, by the way, the carousel's not over, because now Oklahoma and Notre Dame have to find their new coaches. Hey, Cincinnati, better watch out for Luke Fickell. Matt Campbell, Iowa State, is this the time? Is this the time he moves on? Who else might be interested there? One guy I don't think will be on the move is Josh Heupel. Tennessee fans perhaps fearing that because, of course, Heupel was a national championship quarterback at Oklahoma, his alma mater, and now that job is open. But having worked in Oklahoma before, having covered Heupel when he was an assistant coach there, it didn't end particularly well on that front. Legacy as a player, as a quarterback, being a national champion, but it didn't go particularly well when Heupel was the offensive coordinator under Bob Stoops. That's why they brought in Lincoln Riley. And I'm not sure on either side they're quite past that yet. And I do know that Heupel loves Tennessee and believes in the tradition, as he calls it, the power of the T. He believes in the fan base and what it represents and what it can mean for recruits and what they can do in the SEC East. So I think Heupel's probably put. But make no mistake, the carousel is not over. It will continue. And this comes to a larger point for me. Contracts keep growing in length and in dollar amounts. That's just part of the business. Maybe the only group of people in the country right now that are inflation-proof are college football coaches. But the thing that I think is most concerning if you're a college football fan isn't the money. Schools have boosters, and clearly if you're a top-notch college football program, those boosters seem to have endless pockets. But I think the real concern for the health of college football comes in the timing of all of this. A few years ago, The NCAA made the decision to make an early signing period for college football. And it comes around December 20th every year, whenever the Wednesday falls in that range. It's at the end of the first semester, kind of right before bowl season, as opposed to what used to be the official signing day, the first Wednesday of February. And I didn't like it when they made the first announcement, and I didn't like it after the first couple of years. But the reason why I didn't like it initially is different than now. When I didn't like it initially, it was for this purpose. I felt like it watered down the entire process. If you're a college football recruiting junkie or someone who wants to see those young men celebrated for the accomplishment of getting to the highest level of college athletics and being able to play college football, having multiple signing days really waters it all down, because you have people going in December, but it's not the full thing. And then you have more people going in February, but then that's the second day. You don't get the full experience and appreciation that you once had in the past. I also think where it fell on the calendar, it lost a lot of luster. I mean, even from a football program standpoint, you hope that you're competing in a bowl game. For some of these schools, you might be competing in a bowl game the next couple of days after that. So what's the bigger story right then for your fan base? I mean, some, it will be the recruiting. Who's coming next? But for a lot of people, it will be, what about the game? What about the bowl game we're about to go to? What about the playoff our team is in? What about the Rose Bowl or what have you? I think it takes some of the shine off of signing day and off of those players. But now that I've actually seen it in practice and seen how this has played out over the last few years, I think there's a bigger concern, more so than even the spotlight that goes on the recruits themselves because of recruiting day. It's the urgency that it places on universities and athletic directors to hire new coaches immediately, because they know signing day, which is the lifeblood of all programs, comes just a few weeks after the end of the regular season. And so that has two effects on coaches and ultimately their teams and their fan bases and their universities. Number one, when things start to go south, the decision is made. Dan Mullen was gone before the end of the season. Ed Orgeron was gone, I think, before November. Clay Helton was out at the end of September. If you enter the season with a warm seat, man, it gets hot in a hurry. And there may be no cooling it off, because you may not have the opportunity, because they've made up the mind. They're contacting the boosters to make those buyout payments, and they're moving forward. I don't worry a whole lot about the coaches because they all walk away rich. They get the payouts on the back end. But what about the teams? What about the players at USC this year who got off to a rough start, lost their coach, and then the season imploded on them? And it went from a rough start to a brutal season. What about the players at LSU who won a national championship a couple of years ago, but this year, kind of a ho-hum start? Their coach is on the way out. How do they finish the season? They actually finished it pretty well. Florida was a train wreck. What about those players in the midst of their seasons having to deal with that? It's happening more and more, in part because of this. But then you also have the backside of it. What about the programs that are having terrific seasons that now have to worry about losing their coach and maybe losing it at the most important time of the year? Well, that's happening because these programs, well, they got to make a hire because signing day is a few weeks away, and you want that coach to be recruiting for you tonight. And so they move quickly. And in this case, that means Oklahoma. Now, yes, the season's done. There's just a bowl game awaiting. Oklahoma's not going to go to the playoff. It didn't make the Big 12 championship game. for the first time since Lincoln Riley has been the head coach there. So there's only a bowl game to go. I say only, but all right, so USC comes in there. But what about Notre Dame? Brian Kelly and the Irish are 11-1. They sit 6th right now in the college football playoff rankings. Of the teams in front of them, I don't think anything keeps Georgia out. If Georgia loses to Alabama this weekend, I think Georgia still gets in. Maybe not as the number 1 seed, but I think Georgia still gets in. But if Alabama loses this weekend, Alabama's out with 2 losses. I don't think they get in with 2 losses. Cincinnati, if it loses this weekend, it is definitely out. Michigan, if it loses this weekend, it's out. And then Oklahoma State's at 5, also playing this weekend in the Big 12 championship game against Baylor. If it loses, it's out of the equation. What if all of them lose? Unlikely, but possible. Notre Dame is not out of the mix to go to the college football playoff. And Brian Kelly just left before knowing that result to go to LSU. He's done. He's out the door. He said goodbye to his team this morning. He is the head coach at LSU, and he is recruiting and moving in that direction from this day forward. What about those kids at Notre Dame? Especially if somehow they wind up in the college football playoff. I mean, my word. How awkward would that be? To have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, one of the most storied and successful programs in all of college football history, in the college football playoff, and have their coach leave. Have an interim coach leading them in the playoff. I mean, that's ridiculous. And think about the dominoes. As we said, the carousel's not done. You know who the hottest name's going to be? Luke Fickell in Cincinnati. You know where his team's headed? If they win this weekend, into the college football playoff. Cincinnati could be 13-0. Could be a top 2 or 3 seed in the college football playoff, competing for a national championship. Maybe the only time Cincinnati ever has a chance to get there, given the fact that they're not in a Power 5 program. It is legitimately a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for those guys at this moment. What if Notre Dame comes calling? And do you think they're going to wait until after the playoff? It's not going to happen. They're going to come call much quicker than that. Luke Fickell's going to have to make up his mind. He can maybe delay it through this week as they play the American Conference Championship game. But he's going to have to make a decision very quickly after that, because the call is going to come. I assume from Notre Dame. It might come from Oklahoma, might come from both. But the call is going to come. And he's going to have that distraction. He's going to have to deal with it. He's going to have to decide what he's going to do. And if he wants one of those jobs, if he wants Notre Dame, because it is one of the top 7 or 8 jobs right now, and historically probably even better than that, if he wants one of those jobs, he's got to go. And that means he could be out. There could be an interim coach at Cincinnati. Or even if he decides to coach him through, because that would be the right thing to do, now you got to deal with the distraction that your head coach, the guy who put you in this position, the guy who recruited all those players, the guy who coached them up and got them into the college football playoff, he's going to Notre Dame next year because he thinks that's a better job. And so, yes, he's there to coach you through this semifinal and hopefully a championship game, but he's leaving ultimately because he thinks that's a better job than what this program is right now with you. That's tough, man. That's a tough position to put Luke Fickell in. That's a tough position to put all those players in. And it just stinks for college football. And I don't think it has to be that way. I mean, coaches have always gotten hired at the end of the season. But the fact that you move up the signing day into December, it can't wait anymore. It doesn't move out over a couple weeks. If you're in the playoff, you can't hold it off and tell them to get back to you in early January. You can't do that anymore. Now it's all about right now. Season's over, final game, what's your decision? We need a coach. We need somebody to recruit for us right now because signing day is 21 days away. That's what's happened to college football, and I don't think it's a good thing. And we're seeing it right now. It is shocking the coaches who are leaving, the programs that they are leaving, and where they're ending up. Maybe shouldn't be because of the money and what's all involved there. But it has ramifications. We're going to see more and more of it. And I think we're going to see more and more of this. This feels like silly season. This feels like something that's unprecedented in the sport. But I fear it's only the beginning because other high-profile jobs are going to come open in future years. And those schools aren't going to wait around either. And when they don't, when they come with the money, when they back the Brinks truck up, some other coach is going to leave. He's going to be a good coach with a good team that he's leaving behind. And he's going to leave them in the lurch, quite possibly like we're looking at right now, with the potential to be in the playoff, either with a lame duck head coach that's a huge distraction, or with an interim coach, which is completely unfair to the mission at hand and the players in the program. And I don't think it has to be like that, but it is because of the NCAA rule and the decision to move up signing day. It's bad. It's a bad look. Phone lines are open, 737-7767, the number. Call us up, your thoughts on anything going on tonight. We'll get to your calls and much more when we continue. This is SportsLine on News Channel 5+.